Today on Gunbelievable, we're taking a look at the Walther CCP. Don't be fooled by its unremarkable looks, it's mechanically weird and incredibly polarizing. This gun has passionate fans and dedicated haters who will tell you it's either an overlooked masterpiece or unshootable garbage. Who's right? Let's find out. The CCP comes in your standard lunchbox type container, which has the legally mandatory gun lock and all the usual paperwork. There's a unique disassembly tool provided. We'll come back to that. One insert catches my eye. It warns that if you don't retract the slide all the way when you load it, you might have a jam on account of the striker protruding through the breech face and interfering with the feeding cartridge. Forget jams, though. Imagine a live round gets stuck in the chamber and the slide slams forward with a protruding striker. Will the gun do a P320 and fire uncommanded? I tested this, and the answer is no. The striker's protruding, but it's not fixed. It's spring-loaded, and it has too much give to do anything but make the tiniest little mark on the primer. Still makes me a little nervous. Speaking of the P320, these guns were recalled in 2017 for a drop safety issue. If you own one, go check if it has this dot at the bottom of the magazine well that marks it as having been fixed. If not, you'll need to send it in to Walther for an upgrade. The gun weighs just over 26 ounces or 735 grams, fully loaded with 8 rounds in the mag and 1 in the chamber. That capacity is a bit disappointing. Looking at the spacer ribs in the magazine well, it seems like there was just about enough space for a double-stack mag. Size-wise, it's compact. It's often compared to a Glock 43, but I think a Glock 19 is the fairer comparison. It's about as tall as the 19, though it's nearly an inch shorter in length and a touch thinner. Picking it up, the grip feels quite nice. It has just the right amount of texturing, and it's contoured really well. It's a bit small for my large hands and long fingers, but Mrs. Gunbelievable has tiny hands, and she says it's the most comfortable handgun she's ever picked up. The sights are a simple 3-dot arrangement, totally serviceable. No options for optics, but this gun was released in 2014, so I'll give that a pass. The mag release is a little small, and it's made more difficult to hit by this protective shelf next to it, but in a gun meant for carry, some people prefer that so you don't hit it accidentally. Standard accessory rail for lights and whatnot. The slide release and safety are easy and satisfying to operate. I did find that if you pull the trigger most of the way, then engage the safety but continue pulling, the gun will fire. So, pro tip, don't do that. The trigger isn't heavy at 4.5 pounds, but it's mushy and long. There's some pre-travel before a rolling break with no discernible wall, lots of over-travel. The reset is incredibly long, audible but not really tactile. It's bad, but we'll see how much it actually gets in my way on the range. This gun, like the famous HKP7, works by gas-delayed blowback. Some of the gas from the cartridge is tapped out of the barrel and pushes on a piston that resists the slide. Walther calls it soft coil because it's supposed to reduce felt recoil. We'll come back to that. It also allows for a weaker recoil spring, making the slide easier to rack. It does take less force to rack than the other 9mm handguns I own, but not wildly so. If you have limited hand strength, you'll probably appreciate the difference, but others might not notice it. The slide serrations give you a good grip, but they could be grippier, and its travel has some hitching I wish wasn't there. Shooting the CCP is mostly unremarkable. It feels about like I'd expect a gun of this size and weight to shoot. I wouldn't call it snappy, but it's definitely punchier than a Glock 19. The recoil management is just average, and that's disappointing given the talk about its quote-unquote soft coil system. Reliability has been perfect for me, though I've been told they get dirty and need to be kept clean. We'll come back to that. I thought the lack of a wall in the trigger would make really precise shots more difficult. It didn't hurt as much as I expected, though it doesn't help. I'm also not used to this crazy long reset, so when I try to go fast, I'll sometimes not let it out far enough and get a dead trigger. Nice triggers are overrated, and I don't think you need a fancy one to shoot well, but if you want to become a top-tier pistolier, this one's gonna hold you back at least a little. The P7 is infamous for getting toasty on account of the hot gas it taps off and sends to that piston underneath the barrel, and the CCP is similar. After putting 6 or 8 mags through it in quick succession, this area on the frame right above the trigger, just where you rest your finger when you're not shooting, gets uncomfortably warm. For many people, it may not be a big deal, but if you're planning to take this to a high round count pistol class, or if you typically shoot outdoors in the Arizona sun, you'll need to pace yourself. Having shot the CCP, it's time to clean it, and this is where things get wild. To start, you empty the gun and dry fire, then push that disassembly tool into the back of the slide. Avoid putting the tip of it in the notch above, instead put it in the notch below and it'll guide itself into place. The slide can then lift up just slightly, pull it to the rear, and the gun comes apart. Not so bad so far. You can see we have a fixed barrel, recoil spring, and that dangling gas piston. Putting it back together is trickier. There's a bit of fiddling to get the piston to line up with the hull and to get the barrel to line up with the slide. Once you do, it's natural to pull the slide rearward, but resist the urge. That gums everything up. Instead, just get it to the neutral position, then push on that notch again. The slide should pop down, and you're done. If you don't have the disassembly tool, you can do this with a tiny screwdriver, but then the whole cylindrical plug can rotate. In fact, it really wants to rotate. It rotates every time I use a screwdriver. If it doesn't go too far, you'll just need to spin it back into place before reassembling, but if it twists far enough, it dramatically escapes captivity and flies across the room under spring pressure. I would not try to take this thing apart away from home without the tool. Even at home, with the tool, I had a serious problem while filming this video. I took the slide off, and the plug made an unexpected dramatic escape. I found it again, but this little black plastic piece that sits on the end of the spring went missing forever, and I had to get a replacement. When the slide is off, the plug is retained by this small roll pin in the side of the slide. Somehow, my gun's roll pin either backed out or sheared at the tip just enough to not catch the plug. It took a roll pin punch and a few attempts for me to push it back in just far enough to work and stay working without interfering with the striker channel. This is not something that should be happening on a gun that's only seen a few boxes of ammo in its whole life. So who is this gun for? The first video advertisement for the CCP showed a woman defending her children in a parking lot, which underlines this gun's target demographic: people with small hands and limited strength who want something smaller than a Glock 19 without sacrificing controllability. But this gun isn't that. Sure, the grip's great and the slide is easy to manipulate, but the recoil is nothing special, the trigger is seriously subpar, and the disassembly process would suck the light out of a first-time gun owner's eyes. Some might find this thing charming, but then again, some people like Nickelback. That's it from Gunbelievable on the CCP from Walther. Smash that like button, be sure to subscribe. If I get 1 million subs, I'll shoot a couple hundred rounds and cook an egg on the frame.